This is the Louie T Network.
In the lab room.
Who else could it be? But me, Dormy. Louie T, welcome. You are in the lab room, of course. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. What time is it? It's time! It's time! It's playoff time! And I'm here to direct you on the road playoffs. Starting with the number one seed in the NFC, the Carolina Panthers. Panthers had a magnificent season, finishing up at 15-1, just falling short of the perfect regular season. This team transformed from a mediocre to good to better than average to the best team in the league over the course of the season. We start early in the year with some less than stellar performances versus some average ball clubs at the time in the Texans and the Saints, getting wins against the Jaguars, Texans, and Saints. To start the season off, you didn't see dominant out of this team early on in the season. I mean, Ryan Mallett and the Texans scared no one early in the season. The Saints without Drew Brees, Luke McCown did a hell of a job in Carolina, but the Panthers did what they found a way to do all season long, and that was win. But you did not see dominant football team early on as they started the season off 3-0. But that Week 6 comeback to me was the season-defining moment for this football team, and the moment when they realized we have something special here. That was the bully. That was the juggernaut that they had to overcome in order for them to have the type of season that they are having currently. They needed to slay that dragon known as the Seattle Seahawks. That was a team that had beaten them 4 consecutive times and had eliminated them from the postseason last year in Seattle. That was a demon that they had to conquer, and once they did, with that miraculous comeback down 9 with 7 minutes left in that game to win 27-23, that's the moment the Panthers realized we can do this. And they did do that with some big wins following up after that Seattle road win. They go home, they beat Green Bay, and they had them walloped. I'm talking, 30-something, 37 to like 6. I mean, it was really bad. They were up big in that game, 37-13, something along those lines. They were up big in that game before they took their foot off the gas pedal and allowed the Packers back in that game, but ultimately won 37-29. Another big win at home versus the Colts. Had the Colts dead to rights, allow Andrew Luck to take the game into overtime and almost steal it from them before they found a way to get it done in overtime, winning that football game. Week 12, the destruction of the Cowboys on Thanksgiving was validation that this team is serious. Tony Romo had come back the week before versus Miami. Everybody was talking about this is the week the Panthers lose. This is the week that they aren't unbeaten anymore. And they go in and they destroy Tony Romo, destroy the Cowboys season, hurt Romo, pick him off 3 times before they escort him out of the game and end his season. And that was a dominant performance for all to see on national television while you were eating your turkey and enjoying the festivities. So that was a win that got them to 11-0 on the season and really opened a lot of people's eyes to the fact that this team isn't playing around. In case you didn't know and weren't taking notice, this team is serious. They can get you from the defensive side of football. In that game, the offense wasn't great. The Cowboys were able to force them to kick field goals. But you know what was great in that game? The defense. And I thought that might have been their most dominant performance defensively all season long with the pick sixes and the big plays from the defense. But then 2 straight division games after that Dallas win were really eye-opening. You had the New Orleans game where you say, oh wow, they go to New Orleans, they fall behind early in that game. New Orleans jumped out to a 2-touchdown lead, had a chance to put them away, couldn't do so. Cam Newton put on his MVP highlight performance, and I think that's the one that sold it up for me. When I looked at that game and what Cam Newton was able to do, he put this team on his back because the defense did not have their fastball in that game. He put this team on his back, refused to lose that ball game, and to me, he put his name on the MVP trophy that day in New Orleans. as they won that football game 41-38 and remain unbeaten on the season. Then, the next week, I thought was one of their signature victories of the season within the division. They blanked the Atlanta Falcons, and Falcons had been struggling for a while coming into that game. And to me, that was the low point of the season for the Falcons. Being blanked in Carolina, it was ugly. They scored 21 points in the first quarter and really put the Falcons out of their misery very early in that ball game on the way to a shutout victory. It was a dominant performance from a dominant team who at the time was 13-0. That set up a monumental matchup that everyone, just like the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving, had the Giants winning and ending the undefeated streak. We've seen the Giants do this before. They're a team that they play up to the level of their competition. This was the Josh Norman and Odell Beckham. Shame on you when you step to the old dirty backup game. And we know how that all turned out for about 2.5, maybe even 3 quarters. Those boys weren't even playing football. They were wrestling. They were fighting. And it was a heavyweight championship bout. And I call it a draw. Both of those guys got in some serious shots, and both of them probably should have been ejected out of the game. Odell Beckham for sure. When it was all said and done, though, the Panthers had a lead that swelled to 35-7 and had this game in their grasp. But much like they had done earlier in the season with some teams, they took their foot off the gas pedal, like they did against Indy, like they did against Green Bay, and allowed them to come roaring back and tie this game at 35 before going down. Cam Newton again showing why he's the MVP this season, taking his team on a last-minute drive to set Graham Gano up for the game-winning field goal as they win the game 35-38 to preserve the undefeated streak at 14-0. But next week, they go into Atlanta. They had just dominated the Falcons the week previous, and so you just felt like they were going to go in there and do much of the same. Remember last season, they needed to go into Atlanta to win the division, and they smoked the Falcons. It was bad. It was something like 70-something-3 was the total combined score of the last 2 games that the Falcons and the Panthers had played against one another. You just felt like they were going to dominate them once again, but that was not the case. The Falcons were more than ready and game to get this done. They go and they beat the Panthers in their streak, and I think it was a humbling experience for the Panthers. They were smelling themselves, and they thought that the Atlanta Falcons were going to lay down and give them another W, and they walked into a trap, and they lost the football game 20-13. Not having Jonathan Stewart was a big blow for them, and they had some injuries. Ted Green Jr. got banged up in that game, but it was all good. Okay, I think that was for the best for this team, and you never want to lose the game, first and foremost, but then you would have had to answer the questions. Do you play your guys in week 16 or 17? Do you rest them? Then you're going to have to answer those questions all throughout the playoffs. To just get that out of the way and just to be able to play football, I think is the best thing that could have happened to this Panthers team. Everyone asked the question, can they lose 2 straight? Could they give up home field advantage, something they worked so hard for all season long with a loss at home to Tampa Bay in week 17? Are you kidding me? They go and they smoke the Buccaneers. Now, again, early in the game, Buccaneers came in and tried to give them a tough go, but we knew what was going to happen. It was only a matter of time before Cam Newton and those boys turned it up. The defense forced some mistakes. They were able to win that football game 38-10 to finish up the season at 15-1. Grab that number 1 seed that they deserved, that they earned this entire season. And they go into the playoffs with a world of confidence. And still, they've got that ammunition. They've got that chip on their shoulder because people still are doubting the Carolina Panthers as they head into the 2015-2016 NFL playoffs. A lot of people are still saying, but there's always a but with this Panthers team. You see, the Panthers can't slay all of the critics and go to the Super Bowl. And this time, unlike 2002, win the whole thing. I'm Louie T. Thank you for joining me. That was the Carolina Panthers and their road playoffs.
There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at @InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In the Lab Room. That's In the Lab Room on Facebook and at In the Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel. if you haven't already done so.